Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy spring. We're almost there. Dr. Heldman here, Tech Talk Education. In this video, this is part 14 of a PowerShell series I've been doing. I want to teach you how to write some basic PowerShell scripts. So this should be informative and fun. Let's get started. All right, so let's get into this. What we're going to do is we're going to start PowerShell. I want to start this in administrative mode so that I can create these PowerShell scripts. So what I'll do is I will right-click the icon, the PowerShell icon, and say Run as Administrator. UAC pops up. That's User Account Control. This is on Windows. You can run PowerShell on the Mac or in Linux as well. And there's my PowerShell window, and I'll just go ahead and dock that to the screen here. Now you notice it puts me in Windows System 32 because I'm administrator. Right now I'm logging on as administrator, but what we want to do is move to a different folder. So I'm going to cd to /users /wheld /ps_temp. Now I made this folder a little while ago. The command to make a folder is make dir, stands for directory, make a directory. It works the same way as Linux works, except the command is different. It's mkdir. So here we are. Now what I want to do is I want to create a new PowerShell script. Now I have a lot of ways that I could do this. I could use ASC, which shows up right here. Let me right click that. There's ISE, Integrated Script Editor. I said ASC, but I meant ISE. We could use the Windows PowerShell ISE right here. We could use VS Code, or we could just simply use Notepad because it's just text. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and use Notepad, and we're going to create a brand new script file called Hello World. So I'm going to type in Notepad hello_world. And I'm going to give this the extension of PS1, and hit enter. I'll bring it over here, and here we are. Now what we want to do is we're going to just write a basic script that just writes something out to the screen. And we have to remember that when we're working with PowerShell commands, we've got some sort of a command like get or set or write or read. And then we tell it what we want it to do, how we want it to read or write or get or set, the thing that we want, the object that we want it to do that on. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to write to the host. I'm misspelling write to the host. The thing we're going to write is Hello World. Hello World is usually something that gets written every time somebody's starting to try to learn a new programming language, so it's very appropriate here. So I will click File, Save, and I've got that now, and I'll just minimize that. Now in order to run that, what we need to do is, if we just ran it natively, if I do an ls here, and I see that it's sitting out there, by the way, dir will work as well. It's interesting because PowerShell supports all of the old Windows and DOS commands, but it also supports quite a few Linux commands. Not all, but quite a few. So dir would work as well. I'll clear the screen, do an ls, and we can look at hello world.ps1. Now the substitute for the cat operation, let's try cat. I don't think it will work here. We'll try it and see if it works. It does work, so that's really good. We could also do the old Windows word type, where this is a DOS word type. Let's see if it supports that as well. And sure enough, so those both work. So clear the screen, ls. Now let's run this thing. So if I just tell it that I want to run hello world.ps1, will it run for me? No. And the reason why is because it is not in the path for where PS1 expects scripts to be. And so it's giving us a pretty good error here, but you have to read down a little ways to figure out where it's at. So this much is error. It says it's not recognized as the name of a commandlet, but it actually is a commandlet, or script file or whatever. I guess it's saying that it doesn't know that this is a commandlet. But if you look down here, here's our hint right here. You see here where it's saying /. Now let's get this straight right away so that you're not confused when you're on the system. When you're in Windows, we are strictly a backslash. So how does it look? Backslash, which is an uppercase, it's just above the enter key, and it's a lowercase key. That is called a backslash. The slash key is next to the right shift key. Slash key is used in Linux, backslash is used in Windows, but it's telling us the same thing as we do in Linux, where we have to do a // to get a command to run. In this case, we have to do a // to get this command to run. So I'll clear the screen, hit my up arrow, and put in a // and let's see if it'll run. And it did just fine. So if we know that we're in a directory that is not in the path where PowerShell will go to look to execute scripts, and we're in our local directory here, we need to execute that script with a /. Now, you may run into trouble when you're trying to run PowerShell scripts based upon the execution policy that you have set. There are several of them. Let me show them to you, and then we'll go look at how you can see those. Here they are. So there are essentially 6 of them, although one is sort of a fake out. The top one is restricted. This is the default in Windows PowerShell. So if you have PowerShell and you've never modified the execution policy, it is going to default to restricted. The reason for this is because Microsoft, we've talked about this before, they get hit and hit and hit and hit again by hackers and nation-state groups that have hacking organizations and what have you. And so Microsoft is a huge target. And over the years, hackers have found that if they can write a toxic macro, put it in Word or Excel, or maybe they write a PowerShell script, somebody's going to be tempted to maybe get that in the mail and run it, and it will destroy their system. And so Microsoft is very cautious about security. This is why they purchased the antivirus product called Defender years ago, and they built that into the system. So the default execution policy inside PowerShell, if you have not set it, is going to be restricted, which means that there are no scripts allowed and only interactive commands. Now, there's one called all signed, and what the signed part here means is that we have to have a valid digital certificate signed by a trusted authority. Only scripts signed by a trusted publisher, meaning that they have a valid signed certificate, can run. Remote sign means that local scripts will be able to run, but if you download a script, it's going to require a trusted signature, a certificate that contains a trusted signature. Unrestricted means there's no restrictions. All scripts can run. But it warns you before trying to run downloaded scripts, so I think that's pretty handy. And again, it's Microsoft trying to make sure people are safe as they're using these computing processes. There's one called bypass. Now this is used in automation scenarios where we're using, we've developed a script and it's going to go out and do something for us. It's going to build something for us. There's a lot of scenarios for this. So if you were writing scripts, for example, to go up to an Azure cloud shell, for example, or you wanted to do some sort of a cloud deployment, you're using Microsoft's tool called Intune or SCCM. One of those are both Microsoft Tool System Configuration Manager. Then you would want bypass to be set because the script's never going to see a human being. It's just going to go out and run and do some work for you. So it is used in automation scenarios. And finally, this really isn't one if the restriction policy is undefined. In other words, you have not set a restriction policy, an execution policy. If all the scopes are undefined, the default is restricted. So what we said before, if we don't have anything set, we're going to show this as set restricted. Now the command to look at your execution policy is going to be git tac execution policy, and this is camel case here. When we say camel case, we're talking about each letter of a word being capitalized. So it's like a dromedary hump on a camel. You go over the hump like that. And these do not have to be in proper case like this. It could be all lowercase. Microsoft has long been case sensitive, agnostic. Either way it goes, it's fine with them. I'm going to continue to write those out because I think it makes it easier for you to see the words. And so we hit enter, and I'm set for unrestriction. Well, so this keyword get means that I'm going to get some data about something, and in this case I'm getting it about the execution policy. So to set something, let's say that I wanted to set it to remote sign, I would say set and execution policy. Now you have things that you can do that are apart from setting the execution policy. So in this case we're going to say we specifically want you to set the execution policy for us, and we're going to set it to remote sign like so, and hit enter. And you get prompted with this wording. The execution policy helps protect you from scripts that you do not trust. You might expose you to security risks. So Microsoft is really thinking about your security as a user on these systems. And I hear you. A lot of times, you might get a blue screen, people get malware, etc. But boy, back in the day when Windows was first getting going, there were days when it was pretty laughable. Like people were hitting Microsoft all the time and finding roads into Windows. They have really tightened this up. It's actually pretty impressive what Microsoft has done in terms of this kind of security. Now, can stuff sneak through? Of course it can. People are constantly looking for ways around Microsoft code. But they do give you a lot of good help here, making sure that you're not going to execute some script that is malware, that contains malware. And they give you even a web link to go to look at more information about what you're trying to do. And they ask you the question, do you want to change this policy? So if you say A, that means yes to all. I want to do it all the time. Yes just means for this script. I'm going to go ahead and do A, and I'll keep this at the remote sign. And of course what that means then is that if I download something from the web and it doesn't have a signed policy attached to it, signed certificate attached to it, it won't allow me to execute that. Alright, well let's try redoing this, only this time we're going to use what's called the integrated script editor, the PowerShell integrated script editor. It's also known as the ISE. So what I'm going to do is right click this and open up Windows PowerShell ISE right here. And what you get is basically a development pane where you can do your work here, and you've got all of the commands down here. This is one of the handier places that you can go to find out everything that you can do inside PowerShell. I want to let you know that if you're going to run, for example, Azure commands, you might have to download the Azure PowerShell commands and bundle them into PowerShell. So it really depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish, because there have been PowerShell commands developed for a variety of scenarios, and they may not all come natively bundled into your rendition of PowerShell. Okay, let's create a new script. So I'm going to say File, New, and you could do a Control-N, or you could just hit this button right here and create a brand new script. And what happens is it turns into a dual pane window here. So I've got the execution pane, I've got the script pane, and over here I've got the helper pane. And you can resize any of these as you need to get a little more screen real estate if that's something that you're interested in. So think of ISE as essentially a pretty good IDE for strictly PowerShell commands. I'm going to save this. So I'm going to save as, and I'm going to go to the area that I had before. So I'll go to my computer, this PC, C drive, users, W held, PS temp right there. And I'm going to save this as Hello World 2. I like to do that. I know that's goofy, but I just try to keep things straight like that. It helps me keep things in mind. And I'm going to do a .ps1. Alright, so up here on the tab here you can see that we've got the .ps1. And let's try writing that again. So we're going to write to the host. Oops, sorry about that. I don't think that would create a problem at all. I just like to be cautious about how I'm writing this stuff so it makes it more readable. Hello from ISE IDE. How's that? Like so. Okay, so we've got that. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and run this thing. The run button is right here. It's this little green run button. Very, very common in Visual Studio products. I hit run. The script you are about to run will be saved. That's okay. I'm going to say don't show that anymore. Boom. There we go. And it ran that script just fine for me. So this is nice. Now, Notepad, while it's a great thing, is a good way to go. But honestly, ISE is going to come bundled with PowerShell, at least in Windows. So this is a good way to go about editing your PowerShell scripts, running them, making sure they're running correctly so you don't have to jump back and forth in terms of this generated an error, I've got to go fix it, now I'll rerun it, etc. It just makes it kind of a one-stop shopping environment. Alright, so we can go ahead and we can declare variables inside PowerShell, and the way that you do that is with a $sign. So I'm going to do $name. Now what that means is that we are declaring a variable, a memory variable. You recall that we have a variable here, it's got the data inside here. The computer knows it by its memory address. We know it by the value that's inside there. And so we're going to put, I'm just going to go ahead and put in here Bill like that. Now we're going to modify this a bit. So instead of saying hello from ISE IDE, I'm going to say hello name. And I'll put the $sign in here. Now what this is doing, you see here how this is called, I don't know if it's called that here, but in Visual Studio it's called IntelliSense. And the concept is, this is a fabulous invention by Microsoft. These guys are so smart when they want to be. So it's telling you that you do have a variable out here called name already, and it knows about it. And this is IntelliSense telling you, hey, I know about this variable. You could go ahead and select it off the list of variables that you have out there. But we just went ahead and typed it in. So now what's happening here is you're saying, okay, I've got this variable sitting out here, and it contains the word Bill. And instead of hardwiring the word Bill into it, I just go ahead and reference that variable. So let's run this. Boom. There's hello Bill. And you could just change this right away to something else, and it would go ahead and run it and do it the same way. So that's very good. Now let's see if clear will work on this screen. Yep, it sure does. So everything's good here. Let's modify this just a bit so it's a little bit more interactive. Let's say we had a bunch of users that we want to ask them their name, and we're going to take something and do something with that name that they type in. That is going to be a read command. So in this case, we're going to read host. We're going to read whatever they typed in, and I'm going to say enter your name. Now in times past, when I've taught kids how to code in high school, I would force them to do a colon and a space, because what we want to do is have it look nice and neat where the cursor is flashing. But in this case, PowerShell is actually neatening that up for us, so we really don't need all that. It's going to do that for us. And now I'm just going to say hello $name, just like that. But the thing that we've added here is another PowerShell command called read host. And this action is I'm going to read from the host, i.e. the keyboard, and I'm going to write out to the host, i.e. the monitor, whatever's inside name. So we're taking whatever we've typed and putting it inside the name variable here. So let's run this and see how it works. So I'm going to say, enter your name. My name is Tarzan. It's really not, but there you go. That's working really well. Okay, so I'm going to close this one and create a new one. I'm going to create one called math. So I'll do a file, save as, and I'm going to call this math.ps1. And you can size these windows, move them up and down as you need to. If you need more real estate for your script or less, that turns out to be really helpful when you're troubleshooting things. What we're going to do is declare a couple of variables. So I'm going to declare a variable called number1, and I'm going to set it equal to 17. And then I'm going to declare another number called num2, and I'm going to set that equal to 33. Now we can do math with that. So we can declare a variable called sum, and I'm going to set it equal to num1 plus num2. And then I'm going to write out the result. So write host, the sum is sum, like that. And let's see how that works. Boink, just like that. I guess I probably should save this first. Let's see if I save this and I run it. Beautiful, it works just great. So that's going to really work. And ISE is so handy. And if you were looking for a PowerShell command, they're all over here on the right hand side, so that actually makes it pretty easy And there's a billion of them, so it's a really big thing. Now you should be aware of the numbering system that you have. So I'm going to put a comment in here. A single line comment in PowerShell is a hashtag. It's almost universal. There are some languages that use a little bit differently. For example, C and C++, it's // for a comment, but in this case, hashtag is a single line comment. And your math operators are plus, dash for a minus, the subtraction sign, slash for division, uppercase 8, which is a star for multiplication, and then there is a modulus operator, which is a percent sign. Now, if we wanted to raise something to a power, you'll find that every language you study has a different way of rendering exponents. So rendering something as an exponent is a little bit more tricky. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Render an exponent. It gets a little bit weird here, and I'm running out of real estate. I'm going to move this down a little bit, and I'm going to clear the screen here so I've got a little more real estate here. All right, so this is really interesting. So I'm going to create a variable called exponent, and I'm going to set it equal to, and let's say that I wanted to set something to the power like 2 to the 8th, because that turns out to be super handy when you're calculating binary values, the capacity of something that's rendered in binary. Let's do this. So I'm going to do a right and left parentheses. I'm going to tell it to use the math library, math, like this. Now I'm going to put in something really weird here. This is pretty common in certain kinds of coding. This is going to call out a class object here. And the thing that I want to do, and you can see here that I've got a whole bunch of things that are available inside the PowerShell math library. The one that I'm looking at is called POW. So I'll come down and get it right here. Boom. And now it needs to know what I want to render. So I want to render 2 to the 8th power. And I'm not done. I've got to close this off. And let's see if I can write that out. So I will write host exponent. And I will save this. Let's see if it runs for me. Beautiful. It does a beautiful job here. So there you go. That's how you would render an exponent inside PowerShell. And again, all of the languages are way different in the way that they do exponents, so you're going to have to check the literature for the language that you're using. But in this case, what we're finding is that PowerShell does have a robust math library, one of which is the power function, rendering something to a power. All right, let's do another one. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a brand new script here. And I'm going to save this file, save as. I'm going to call this logic operators. Let's find out how we use these inside PowerShell. Though this would be things like if and else constructs. Okay, so let's declare a variable called age, and we're going to set it equal to 18. So we're determining whether or not you can register to vote, for example, or register for the selective service. In the United States, males that are over the age of 18 have to register with the selective service. I don't know if that's the case anymore. I'm 70. I had to do that back during the Vietnam War, and thank goodness I wasn't drafted. But it is a thing, and so adult males over 18 have to register with the selective service in case there's a draft. So we've got that now. So we've got the age, and now we're going to put in an if construct. So I'm going to say if, in parentheses, if $age is TAC greater than or equal to. So this is really good. You get a lot of tooltip help here. IntelliSense is coming up here and sensing what it is that you want to add. And in this case, we need the greater than or equal to operator. If we have wanted less than or equal to, it would be LE like that. But in this case, we want to find out if it's greater than or equal to 18. Left and right curlies. And I will tab in a little bit so I get a little bit of real estate there. I'm going to write host. You are an adult and must register with Secret Service, with Selective Service. And I don't think young ladies have to do that. Could be that they wind up changing it, I have no idea, but you get the idea. Okay, now that's my if construct. So if age is greater than or equal to 18, I'm going to write this out. Else, left and right curlies, tab, and you can put a little bit of space in here if it's easier for you to see it this way. If this is the case, right host, you are a minor. No need to panic yet. And there isn't really a draft right now in the United States, but if there ever was one, God forbid, we would have to have our 18-year-olds registering for that. So that's the point with that. Okay, so let's save this, see if it'll run for us. Now, say it's missing an ending curly brace here, so let's go figure out what it is that we need. It doesn't like this curly brace right up here. And I get a little tiny squiggly right below that left curly brace. You see that? And if I point to it, it's going to give me the same thing as before. Oh, I see what I did. I didn't put in a right curly brace here. Right curly brace. Did that fix it? Yay. Now, I was talking about this with VS Code as well. If you just click to the left of any one of the curly braces, it's going to show you its mate. And this is really handy when you're getting into very long if and else statements, and you got a whole bunch of things going on. You got a bunch of curlies, or maybe you have nested loops, things like that. So this is a pretty handy feature. And this is a typical feature of a robust IDE, such as this ISE. Let's run it and save it, and run it and see if it works. You're an adult, must register with the Selective Service. Well, what if I put in 14? Let's see if that works. So I'll save and run. You are a minor, no need to panic about the draft yet. Okay, very good. Let's do a loop here. So let's take a look at a loop. So I'll do a new one. I'll go File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Loops. So we've got our loop out here. Now this is very, very common in C and C++. I think that Java does it this way. It could be that JavaScript does it this way as well. Python's a little bit different about when we're talking about a for loop. So this is a PowerShell for loop example. So a for loop means that we want to start it at some place and we want it to run until we've counted up or down to a certain barrier, and then we drop out of the loop. So it's a three-part dealio. So first of all, we say for, left and right parentheses. Now this is very common. We declare a variable called I, and we set it equal to 1 semicolon. This looks exactly the same, well, not quite the same, but it looks almost the same in C and C++ as it does here in PowerShell. So I'm really grateful for that, because that means if you know how to program in C or C++, Java, you've run into this sort of a for loop before. Now we have a test. So what we've done here is we've declared a variable called I, and we've set it equal to 1. And this nomenclature you're going to see over and over again in all of the languages. They all use this I nomenclature. We're going to say as long as I is tac less than or equal to 5. Now in some languages you'll see them literally using the less than or equal to. That's not going to work for us. In PowerShell we need to use this tac LE thing. As long as we're less than or equal to 5, semicolon. Now look what you've done so far. This semicolon represents one PowerShell statement where you're declaring a variable and populating it with the number 1. Then we're saying we want the loop to run as long as I is less than or equal to 5. And finally what we're going to do is increment the counter. So we do $, and notice here that PowerShell is very good about telling you, oh, I know you've declared a variable out here, so you could double click that to use that, or we could just do ++ like that. Left and right curlies. Okay, this is a basic for loop here, real standard in the way that it's working. I'm going to grab a little more screen real estate so it's easier to see. It consists of 3 parts. This is called a for loop. We are initializing I and setting it equal to 1. We're telling it to go as long as I is less than or equal to 5, and we're going to increment I. Now this plus plus sign means that every iteration of the loop, we're going to add 1 to it. So we start with 1, I plus plus gives us 2, I plus plus gives us 3, and so forth. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to write out the number. Write host. The number, colon, is $I, like that. Very easy. So the only thing you have to remember, like you'll be in C or C++ and you're trying to type in TAC-LE and it's not going to work because it uses a different nomenclature to declare something that's less than or equal to. But apart from that, it's pretty doggone similar to the other languages. So let's save this and run it. Beautiful. It prints out the numbers just beautifully. Let's create another script. So I'm going to go File, New, and I'm going to call this File IO. So I'm going to type in File space I TAC O, or I could just, I don't need the TAC, I'll just do File IO. Now, writing to and from files is a really, really important thing in any language, and it's relatively similar across all the languages, although you will definitely run into differences within the language based upon how you're supposed to do file I/O. But in this case, it's pretty straightforward in PowerShell. Let's take a look at how this works. By the way, I neglected to note here that it is referencing Windows System 32, and then it's showing me the path here to that PS1 file, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to set our content path. I've got a bunch of scripts going here, and I want to update PowerShell so that it knows my content path is here. I'm going to literally type in this path. Now, one way I think that you could do it is you could just highlight this thing right here, and I will even put in the backslash here, right-click, and copy that bad boy, and then in double quotes, I will paste that in. So I'm going to say that my path is going to be hello.text, and then I'm going to give it a value. So TAC value is going to be hello world. I assume there's a comma right there. All right. So what this is doing is it's saying my path is going to be this here. The value is going to be hello world here. So I'm going to save this and run it. Let's see what happens. Boom. And it doesn't like that. And the reason it doesn't like that is because I thought this was all one word, but it's not. So the command is set content. I'm telling it that I want to go look at a path. Oops, I don't want to do that. Undo. Pointing it to this directory here. Let's do a save and run. That looks great. I get a blank here. But now if I do an ls here, let's see if that file's out there. Oops. I'm in the C drive. Let me change to the other one. Backslash users, w held, ps_temp, and ls. And let's see, is hello out there? There's hello.text right there. So we're in good shape there. So I'll clear the screen. So that is working. We've proved that it's working. Now you could come over here and look for some sort of a module. So if you type in set TAC, is there a set content here? There it is right here at the bottom. So I could use it that way instead. All that this right-hand pane is doing is showing you all of the available commands that you have for your work with PowerShell. Okay, let's augment this script a little bit. So this is file IO, and I'm going to declare a variable called content. And I'm going to say that that's going to be equal to, so I'm going to say contents is going to be equal to get TAC content, and we are going to get the content from the path of, I'll put in my path, C:\users, w held, ps_temp, hello.text. And then we want to write this out. So what we're doing here is we're really not writing anything out. We're telling it to go out and open up this file and get the contents of it. And we're going to put that inside the variable of contents. Then what we have to do is write to the host $contents. And let's save this and run it, see what it does. That works really well. Well, guys, I went a little long, and I apologize for that, but a lot of good stuff to know about PowerShell. I'll keep putting out these PowerShell videos. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like what I'm doing here, what I'm trying to do, please tell your friends about it, and please subscribe. You're welcome to drop off comments. I get some really good comments from you guys, and I will talk to you in the next video. Have a great and wonderful day, okay? Talk to you later. Bye-bye.